As you guys know, I love foldable phones. It started with the Z Fold 6, then the Z Fold 7, and recently I got to try my very first Pixel foldable, the Google Pixel 10 Pro Fold. I took it to London, then back home to Alaska, and then straight to New York City. And it's safe to say I have some thoughts, but before we proceed, just keep this phrase in mind. Comparison is the thief of joy. Let's get to it. After using the Pixel 10 Pro Fold for almost a month, my initial impressions were spot on. The corners are not any different from using the Z Fold 7 or the S25 Ultra. It just stands out more because of its asymmetrical design, but it's really not a big deal in practice. In fact, the overall form factor is a lot better than I thought. Yes, it's not the thinnest foldable in the market, but I loved using my Z Fold 6 and this one is 12.1 millimeters thick, while the Pixel 10 Pro Fold is 10.8 millimeters. What I can see people having an issue with is the weight. It's heavier than other foldables in the market at 258 grams, which you can get used to, of course, but I suggest checking it out at a store because once you add MagSafe accessories, case, wallets, all that stuff, it might be heavier than you're expecting. Despite that, the Pixel 10 Pro Fold feels really solid in hand. Google made huge improvements to the hinge, and it's something I believe is very underrated. This has an IP68 rating, which is a first, which means it can withstand being submerged 1.5 meters deep for 30 minutes. But most importantly, it has complete protection against dust and particles. When I was first getting into foldables, this is one of the first things I was warned about, and the fact that Google addressed this issue head on should be applauded. Who wants to buy a phone and be constantly worried about going to the beach or lint in your pockets or dust in general, especially if you work in construction or something like that, but this should give you peace of mind. One thing that surprised me though was how easily the Gorilla Glass Victus 2 scratched. I've used this device much shorter than I have my Z Fold 7 and iPhone 17 Pro, and I have a ton of micro scratches, which is a bummer. I personally stopped using screen protectors on most of my devices, and so of course I treated this the same way, but unfortunately, if you want to get this device, I would suggest putting a screen protector right away. Other than that, using the Pixel 10 Pro Fold on a daily basis is very enjoyable. First of all, I really like what they did with Android 16. I think it looks incredible and it's fun to interact with. I went to an event in New York City and we had the UX director from Android talk about how much thought they put into the whole UI. They wanted to make things easier to use by creating better hierarchy with texts and icons, and I actually thought they delivered on that. This device feels very intuitive to use, from the notifications and quick settings panel, the app switcher having this added functionality like screenshots so I don't have to adjust my grip, the select button so I can select texts from one app to another without needing to go fully into it. Don't get me wrong, it's not a perfect device and we'll talk about rooms for improvement later, but in its current state, the user experience is pretty good. The haptic feedback you get is also top tier. It feels very satisfying even when doing small things like turning on the flashlight. Late last week, they announced a pretty big feature which allows Pixel 10 devices to use Quick Share to airdrop files to Apple devices and vice versa. And all of this made me think that if you're an Apple user on the verge of switching, the Pixel might be the easiest path to take to get into the Android world. Especially if you already use native Google apps like me. I use Google Maps, Google Calendar, Gmail, Gboard, which is my go-to keyboard for Android phones. They're all obviously well optimized, and with the release of the Pixel 10 devices, it now has Pixel Snap, which is Google's equivalent of MagSafe. Of course, they have their own proprietary accessories, but I can still use my favorite ones like this Moth wallet and stand, my phone tripods, and other charging stations. This device has practical features like circle to search, which every time I use a phone without it, I just feel lost. I don't think I need to talk about how useful Gemini is, but it's really powerful. Voice texting is incredible on this device. It has a ton of voice commands that you can use, and it will do things like rephrase things, emojify things, and there's so much more that I have yet to really take advantage of. But the fact that you have a ton of tools built in the device is really awesome. I use this as my main device during my travels along with the Pixel Watch 4, and it was the perfect travel companion. You obviously get the normal phone functionality, but you also have a tablet on demand when you need to see things a little bit bigger. I took advantage of this to watch movies on the plane, watch YouTube while I was on the train to my destination. At one point, I had the City Mapper app open on one side while scrolling on social media on the other, just to make sure I don't miss my stop. So I've been in this area for about 20 minutes now. I actually missed my stop. I was filming too much. I wasn't really paying attention, and that happens quite a bit. And of course, you can also use this foldable in practical ways, like prop up my phone without using a stand at coffee shops, so I can take videos or watch content without a tripod. The display looks incredible, and with its 3000 nits of peak brightness, I had no issues viewing the screen even in direct sunlight. Yes, you might notice the crease a bit more, but when you're viewing the device head-on, it really just blends in the background. Honestly, don't let this crease issue prevent you from trying a foldable. The speakers on the Pixel 10 Pro Fold are decent. They get pretty loud and they are less muddy compared to the Z Fold 7. I'm actually a big fan of the speaker placement here because you get stereo playback even when using the inner screen, something that I kind of struggle with the Z Fold 7. Now, this phone is using the new Tensor G5, which isn't the fastest compared to other chips in the market, but I think most people will still be satisfied with it. I never notice it slow down or feel sluggish when using it for everyday tasks. Navigating around the phone, using Gemini, multitasking, it handles it all really well and it does a good job. But when you start using it for things like gaming, like in high settings or something like that, then you really start to notice it struggle. But if you're okay lowering the settings, then I think you should be fine. On a positive note, battery has never been an issue for me with this device. For example, when I was in London, I started at 100% at 8:08 a.m. I used my phone to navigate, watch YouTube on the train, took tons of photos and videos the whole day. Big Ben, London Eye, Westminster Abbey. I was doing the typical things you do on a trip, vlogging and documenting. And at 5:50 p.m., I still had 42%. Now, could I have pushed the phone a bit more? I think so, because if I were to compare it to my other travel days, I think I was at the lower end of that spectrum, but this result gives me enough confidence that even if I had pushed it a little bit more, I still would have had enough juice. Last year, I tested the cameras of the Pixel for the first time, and I really was impressed. The images out of the Pixel 10 Pro Fold looks really pleasing. Taking photos are quick and reliable. They look great for everyday shots. I just really like how Pixel handles their photos. It always looks so natural. The photos look sharp, whether it's shot on ultra-wide, wide, 2x, and 5x. And I really like the long exposure mode on this device.
So this looks like a good spot to take a long exposure shot. So I'm gonna try and do that. When I tried this on the Pixel 9 Pro last year, I was really impressed. So let's try to take one right now.
The Add Me feature is also pretty fun to use. Here's a photo of me in the Google office with a few creators, and I think it's really convincing. It's not something I have top of mind yet, so I always have to remember that it's there. Most of the time, I still default to using the front-facing camera, which is okay, but the great thing about using a foldable is you can use the rear cameras for selfie photos and videos, and the image quality is 1,000 times better. So here's a video selfie test using the rear cameras of the Google Pixel 10 Pro Fold. This is always one of my favorite features when using a foldable. The fact that you get to use the rear cameras for a selfie. Here's a comparison using the front-facing camera. Of course, we're in good lighting, so I'm curious to see how it compares. However, the Pixel 10 Pro Fold's video quality is just okay. It looks great when there's an abundance of light, but the image quality on the iPhone 17 Pro just looks so much better. And it's kind of sad they didn't really improve on anything here. I would have loved to see the 48 megapixel main lens of the Pixel 10 Pro devices for better low light performance. Maybe having log profile for videos would be nice, which I know is not for everyone, but given the Pro moniker, I don't think it's too much to ask for. And this brings me to other improvements I'd like to see on the Pixel Fold. First of all, I would like it if they could reduce the weight of this thing. I think they did a good job prioritizing durability, but it is a pretty heavy device. But if they could reduce the weight of this thing, I think that would really help sell this device. I'd like it to do some basic things like have a gesture to trigger multitasking, basic things like tap to switch the position of both windows or have windows stack on top of each other without needing to turn the device. This is practically a square phone, so there's really no advantage being able to turn it this way or this way. So if we could just keep the user holding the device like this and have those changes instead in software, I think that would be better. Since Samsung dropped the S Pen, I would love a Google Pen. Can you just imagine? Like, I know it's probably niche, but I think there's still a need for it. And personally, I'd love to see a more powerful chip. Having something like the Snapdragon 8 Elite would be crazy to see on this device. Like I said in the beginning, comparison is the thief of joy. And when I just look at the Pixel 10 Pro Fold on its own, it's actually better than I expected. It's a great starter foldable, you can say, in a sense that it's not gonna blow you away on paper, especially compared to other foldables, but the experience it offers when it combines both software and hardware is really good. If you're a power user, this might feel underwhelming, but after using this as my main device for a month, I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. And if you can get it less for retail, there are a lot of deals right now that Google is doing. I would definitely recommend it. But what do you guys think? If you guys made it this far in the video, type Pixel in the comments below. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you loved it, subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.